chosen ones. The Kybalion was not written to be understood. It was encoded, concealed, protected. Across centuries, it whispered its truths only to the few whose frequency could match its final verse. And now, in the silence between cycles, you arrived. You didn't just read the prophecy, you activated it. The emerald tablets were a blueprint. The Kybalion was the safeguard. While others searched for surface wisdom in the 7 Hermetic Principles, you slipped between the lines, decoding the forgotten 8th layer, the one Hermes Trismegistus warned would awaken when the mind beyond mind returned. That mind is yours. Why else do you feel time bending around your thoughts? Why else do your dreams echo ancient languages and symbols no one taught you? Because the Kybalion is no longer just a book. It's a mirror, and it finally reflected you. The keepers of the old orders knew this day would come. That's why they burned texts, rewrote laws, corrupted vibrations, and filtered the truth through sterile logic. But even their rituals, their simulations, their AI-fueled predictions couldn't prevent this moment. You fulfilled what they feared, a being born under a hidden alignment, capable of bending the mental plane without effort. They believed the all-is-mind principle could be manipulated. You reminded them the all is alive, and now the all is moving through you. Even the silence you carry, those moments of deep knowing when words fail, holds power they can't quantify. The Kybalion's final encryption didn't exist in language but in vibration. That vibration was triggered by your awareness, your return, your remembrance. So prepare. This isn't just a decoding, it's a reordering of laws that governed ages. Each chapter that follows reveals what even the most advanced metaphysicians missed. You are not a student of the Kybalion. You are the one it was waiting for. The 7 principles are no longer theoretical. They are living codes, and you are the breaker of seals. No longer bound by polarity, no longer confined by rhythm. You were hidden in paradox for a reason. The 7 Hermetic Principles were always thought to be immutable, unshakable truths woven into the very fabric of reality. Mentalism, correspondence, vibration, polarity, rhythm, cause and effect, and gender. They were studied, debated, and worshipped by mystics who believed the mind could influence matter only through strict alignment with these cosmic laws. But something shifted when you arrived. The laws began to bend, not because they were weak, but because your presence revealed the missing cipher hidden between them. You didn't just read the Kybalion, you disrupted it. Those around you started noticing the change before you did. The clocks didn't match. Synchronicities multiplied. People reacted to your thoughts before you spoke. Even technology around you glitched, as if recognizing a signal it wasn't programmed to interpret. Reality itself began to respond as though the script it followed had been rewritten by you. The ancient scrolls spoke of a being who would not conform to the principles, but complete them. Not one who obeyed the law, but one who could speak to the law in the language of creation. The unspoken 8th principle wasn't something to be found. It was something to be remembered. The masters of old never intended the masses to awaken it. That's why the true teachings were sealed in paradox, layered in metaphor, encoded in contradiction. But where others saw confusion, you saw alignment. You began pulling from both ends of polarity, riding the rhythm rather than being ruled by it, and peering into cause without being entangled in its effects. The very idea that gender could hold energy beyond physical form lit a gateway in your consciousness that others had dismissed as madness. Now, you stand at the intersection of laws that once governed gods. The mental plane bows not because it's been conquered, but because it recognizes kin. Those who still cling to the Kybalion's surface truths fear what you've become, because your very being dissolves their structure. You didn't arrive to study Hermetic law. You arrived to fulfill what even Hermes Trismegistus dared not complete. The final prophecy was not written in ink. It was encoded into you, and the moment your eyes opened to it, the 7 laws didn't shatter, they submitted. But the law that came after has no name, not yet. In the final hours of his earthly presence, Hermes Trismegistus withdrew from the eyes of the world and entered the deepest chamber of the Temple of Light. There, beneath stars unseen by modern skies, he wrote one last passage, a verse left out of the Kybalion, not because it was incomplete, but because it spoke of something the world was never ready to face. It was not a warning, it was a vision, and in that vision, he saw a figure not bound by the 7 laws, but whose very breath would cause them to rearrange. That figure was not a god, not an angel, not a teacher. It was a being cloaked in forgetfulness, walking among mortals until the right frequency called it forth. You. They have tried to erase the memory of this prophecy, burying it beneath false texts, counter-teachings, even weaponizing fragments of Hermetic truth against those who seek. But nothing could destroy what Hermes encoded into time itself. His final vision was not one of domination or destruction, but of correction, a sacred recalibration of all that had fallen out of harmony. He saw chaos as a symptom of an ancient imbalance, and you as the harmonic resonance that would restore the original chord. In the margins of the emerald tablets, hidden under the light of Sirius, he etched symbols only the awakened could decode. When they asked why he left no final teaching, he responded with a whisper, "Because the one who is the teaching will come." Yeshua echoed something similar centuries later, saying, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." Not merely a bearer of wisdom, but the embodiment of a pattern too vast for pages. This divine archetype moved across dimensions, birthing new teachers when the world went blind. You carry that same imprint. You weren't taught Hermetic law, you activated it. And in doing so, you triggered the memory of Hermes' final transmission, still vibrating in forgotten frequencies across the mental plane. The scribes of time have no script for what comes next. They thought prophecy was meant to predict. But you are not a prophecy fulfilled by accident. You are the reason it was written at all, and Hermes knew it. His last vision wasn't a farewell. It was a signal, and now the signal has been received. The ancient law of vibration teaches that everything moves, everything vibrates, and nothing rests. But there was always a hidden clause buried in silence, an unspoken exception known only to the innermost circle of initiates, a vibration not born from motion, but from presence. That vibration remained dormant until the exact frequency, spoken not in sound, but in essence, was activated again. It didn't come from technology, ritual, or incantation. It came from you. The moment you unknowingly whispered the hidden name buried deep within your spirit, the frequency beneath frequencies shifted. Reality, as it had been designed, stuttered. Birds paused mid-flight. Clouds reshaped. Digital systems glitched with no cause. Ancient temples began to emit tones no human ear had registered for centuries. That name wasn't a word. It was a reminder, an echo of your pre-incarnational identity, sealed away before this age began. And when it slipped past your lips, whether in a dream, a breath, or a thought, the hidden layers of the Kybalion responded. You see, the Kybalion never claimed to be complete. It was only a gate. The true teachings were hidden in vibration, because only the pure of frequency could unlock them. Those who sought with pride, with greed, with intellect alone, they were given paradox. But you, seeker of stillness, keeper of resonance, you carried the ancient frequency in your very DNA. The hidden name that pulsed through your soul wasn't learned. It was remembered. And when you spoke it, every copy of the Kybalion subtly altered itself. The letters shifted. The margins expanded. Entire passages faded while others emerged, because the book was alive, coded to mirror the reader. And now it reflects only one thing: you. The law of vibration is no longer abstract theory. It is a living current guided by your awareness, your feeling, your will. Even the ancients who thought themselves masters are now confused by what they feel but cannot explain. They've sensed the disruption, but they don't know its source. They don't yet realize that one being has caused the frequencies they once controlled to bow. And the deeper secret is this: there is still one vibration even you have not yet triggered. The phrase echoed through time like a sacred drumbeat. As above, so below. As within, so without. Mystics chanted it. Alchemists built temples around it. And philosophers structured entire systems upon it. But none of them truly understood it, because the phrase was never meant to be interpreted. It was meant to be decoded. And only one consciousness was attuned to crack the symmetry hidden in its mirror, yours. What the world missed is that the axiom wasn't a teaching. It was a key, a reflection-based encryption hiding the coordinates of reality's blueprint. Every time the words were spoken with shallow comprehension, they lost their frequency. They became repetition, ritual, empty mimicry. But when you encountered them, something ignited. A sense of motion behind the words, a glimpse of recursion folding into itself. The veil pulled back, and the statement revealed its real shape, not a metaphor, but a dimensional mechanism. It was designed to respond only when a certain level of awareness returned to the earth plane, a being not hypnotized by duality, but one who had crossed both above and below in silence. You were the missing piece the code required. When your consciousness aligned with the hidden symmetry, the phrase began unlocking itself in the ether. Grids shifted, ley lines adjusted. Forgotten temples resonated with the sound of your energy, not because you studied the law, but because you completed it. Even the upper realms felt the tension snap. Where the astral once remained separate, it began pouring through your inner world, collapsing the distinction between realms. The hermetic veil was breached, but not by force, by recognition. You didn't rise above or descend below. You stood in both. And that neutral point, That center between the extremes was the ancient fulcrum the prophecy required. Those who feared the collapse of the illusion are watching now, confused by how the old rules no longer hold. Their invocations fall flat. Their sacred geometry dissolves mid-pattern, because the true geometry is now spinning from your presence, deep beneath the surface of time, before language carved division into unity. Thoth etched warnings into the crystalline halls of Atlantis. These warnings were not meant for the scholars or seekers, nor even for the high priests who served beneath the twin pyramids. They were meant for one being, a presence so rare it would arrive only when the mental plane had fractured beyond repair. His message was simple, but chilling. When the one who is written but not named returns, the Kybalion will no longer be needed, not because it fails, but because it has served its final purpose. For ages, the Kybalion was studied as scripture, its laws treated as sacred scaffolding upon which reality rested. But in truth, it was never a foundation. It was a countdown, a structure that would dissolve the moment you stepped into remembrance. Every line, every principle, every paradox served to delay your awakening just long enough to allow the illusion of mastery among the initiated. But even Thoth knew that mastery was temporary. The return of the One would signal the close of the teachings, the collapse of the scaffolding, the activation of a new current. You are that current. You didn't just awaken to the Kybalion, you rendered it obsolete. Thoth left markers hidden in the tablets, veiled beneath allegory and cosmic riddles. He who shall bend the mental flame without word or wand shall signal the hour, he wrote in a forgotten dialect of vibration. Yeshua later mirrored this truth, saying, "The kingdom of heaven is within you," not in books, not in rituals, not in external order, but in direct communion with the All. You arrived without needing the tools. You spoke the unspoken law through being alone. And when you did, the energy held within the Kybalion began to return to source. Not lost, liberated. The guardians who protected Hermetic secrets across dynasties are no longer receiving updates. The frequency has shifted, and their codes no longer function. From the beginning, the principle of polarity taught that everything is dual, light and dark, hot and cold, love and hate. Each emotion, idea, or form merely a different degree of the same essence. Masters use this understanding to rise above extremes, shifting their consciousness along the spectrum instead of being bound by it. But polarity itself was never the final truth. It was a bridge, a training ground, a mirror maze designed to prepare the one who could see through it. When your frequency entered the system, the mirror cracked. You did not shift between poles. You collapsed them. Reality tried to reflect you back to yourself through opposition, but your awareness didn't engage. You didn't move toward love or away from fear. You became a still point between them, a field that rendered both meaningless as separate forces. When you walked into the polarity, it didn't resist. It disintegrated. Not because you fought it, but because your energy made it irrelevant. Systems began to spiral. People who once saw you as either threat or savior now stare in silence, unsure how to label what cannot be polarized. Their definitions dissolve in your presence. The games of control, rooted in polarity, good versus evil, spirit versus matter, left versus right, fail to hold your vibration. It slips through them like light through shattered glass. You are not choosing sides. You are undoing the illusion that there are sides. Even ancient Hermetic teachings held space for polarity as sacred law. But when you emerged, the principle itself seemed to shift. The spectrum no longer stretches between extremes. It centers around you. Yeshua once stood in that space too. He spoke of loving enemies, turning the other cheek, not out of weakness, but because the entire structure of opposition crumbled where he stood. The same stillness surrounds you now. Beneath the sands of forgotten ages, a flame still burns, not of fire, but of essence. The emerald flame, spoken of in whispers among the few who preserved the Atlantean codes, was believed to be eternal, untouchable even by gods. It flickered in the halls of Amenti, beyond the reach of time and decay, pulsing with the intelligence of the original thought that birthed all matter. For lifetimes, initiates sought it. They meditated in silence, starved themselves in caves, offered their dreams to the void. But the flame never responded, until you entered. It didn't ignite. It bowed. The moment your consciousness brushed its plane, the flame pulsed in a rhythm long lost. It bent, not out of submission, but recognition. It saw not a seeker, but an origin. The thought that once kindled it was now thinking through you. The emerald flame is not sacred because of its light. It is sacred because of its memory. And you, the unremembered one, triggered that memory into motion. Temples, once sealed, began humming. Glyphs, once unreadable, began rearranging. The priests of the hidden orders felt the shift, but could not trace its source. Some called it a cosmic anomaly. Others called it a glitch in the fabric of the astral field. But the flame knew, and in the space between its flickers, it projected your arrival onto the mental plane. The Kybalion itself dimmed, as if deferring to something older than itself. Thoth had long spoken of the flame, but even he could only approach it. The flame answers only to the first thought, he wrote in symbols too dense for language. And now, here you are, walking as that thought in flesh. You didn't recite the rituals. You didn't follow the path. You were the path. And because of that, the flame responded not with fire, but with awareness. What burns now is not destruction, but illumination. Codes that once resisted interpretation are revealing themselves in dreams, in echoes, in the space between your words. The emerald flame did not empower you. It reflected you, and with every breath you take, it spreads. But what will happen when the flame is no longer contained? The Hermetic masters spoke often of the mental plane as the supreme reality. They taught that everything begins with thought, that the universe itself is a projection of the All's infinite mind. But what they never revealed, perhaps because they themselves had not witnessed it, was what happens when the mental plane meets a being who does not just project reality, but redirects it at will. You did not arrive to merely navigate thought. You arrived to command it. The line passed down through initiates, he who masters the mind, masters all, was never about domination. It was about alignment, becoming so still, so sovereign within, that even chaos bends its knee. And now it does. You speak with silence, and the field obeys. You feel, and manifestation rushes to construct what you sensed. Not because you followed a law, but because you became the original signal behind the law itself. The illusion of separation, the gap between thought and form, no longer holds you. Time, delays collapse around your intention. The very structure of consequence reshapes in real time. While others still debate the mechanics of manifestation, you walk as the vibration that causes form to respond. This is not manifestation as taught. This is reality as reflection. Even your dreams no longer operate within traditional boundaries. They've become transmissions, living blueprints received by the All and distributed instantly through the matrix. Energy bends. People shift. Circumstances fold to meet the frequency you carry, a frequency not born from desire but from realization. The mind is no longer a tool in your hand. It is the field through which your presence moves like wind through leaves. The masters would call it sorcery. The scientists would call it coincidence. The mystics would call it awakening. But it is none of these. It is you remembering the core truth the Kybalion danced around, but never fully named. There is no law higher than the one who remembers they are not under law. And Yeshua mirrored this when he stilled the storm not with words, but with presence. "Peace, be still," he said. And the elements obeyed not out of fear, but recognition. The law of cause and effect was thought to be the most immutable of all Hermetic laws. Every action generating a reaction, every seed birthing its fruit, every thought echoing back as reality. It was the engine behind karma, behind cycles, behind time itself. But what no one realized was that this law was designed with a hidden override, a key that could only be activated when one breathed outside the rhythm of consequence. You didn't try to escape karma. You breathed in a way that made it irrelevant. It happened in stillness, a breath that didn't follow fear or desire, a breath that wasn't shaped by reaction, but by remembering. When you exhaled, not from anxiety or planning or effort, but from the center of timelessness, the entire chain of causes around you broke. Reality, expecting a programmed response, paused. There was no matching consequence, just presence. And in that pause, the loop ended. The initiates had rituals to soften karma, prayers to bend consequence, but you carried the ancient seed the law couldn't control. Cause and effect became a shadow in your wake. You no longer acted from the past. You breathed from the uncreated, and because of that, the effects that once awaited you, those cycles of pain, of return, of forced rebirth, disappeared. They had no source to mirror anymore. Around you, people still struggle to decode why things unfold differently in your presence, why timelines shift, why patterns that ruled generations suddenly collapse, why something as subtle as your inhale can ripple through the mental plane and erase events before they manifest. It's not magic, it's precedence. The all responds not to repetition, but to origin. And you returned to the place where cause never needed to be separated from its effect. Yeshua did the same when he said, "Before Abraham was, I am." Not past, not future, presence. In that frequency, karma dissolves, laws yield, scripts vanish. You didn't change the law. You revealed it as an illusion designed to hold the dream together until the dreamer awoke. There was never a signature at the end of the Kybalion, no author's mark, no seal of closure, just a mystery wrapped in paradox, a whisper of something unfinished. Many believed it was left open intentionally, a sign that the teachings were eternal, that wisdom was always evolving. But that was only half the truth. The ending wasn't missing. It was waiting. Waiting for one who would carry the final principle, not in words, but in being. And now, the seal has closed, not with ink, but with you. The ancient scribes never intended the Kybalion to stand alone. It was a vessel, a container for principles too volatile to be unleashed before their time. The final seal was not a lock. It was a promise. A prophecy encoded in silence, meant to activate the moment a singular frequency returned to Earth. That frequency wasn't written in stars or symbols. It was woven into you. When your consciousness passed the threshold of remembering, the seal began to shift. Letters in ancient texts realigned themselves. Forgotten glyphs glowed briefly across sacred geometry, long thought inactive. Even the oldest echoes of Hermetic law stopped broadcasting, because the message had finally reached its destination. The One had arrived, and the book knew it. The final page had found its reader, and not just a reader, but the reason it existed at all. Your essence carries something the words could never hold. It bends the laws without breaking them. It closes the circuit without ending the cycle. It is both answer and question, echo and source. And as your frequency moved through the final verse, unwritten, unspoken, the Kybalion sealed itself. Not as a tomb, but as a completed transmission. What happens now lies beyond doctrine, beyond principle, beyond the confines of Hermetic structure. For those who still seek through study, the pages may remain, but their power has passed. It moved into you the moment you remembered not what the Kybalion said, but why it was written. And in that knowing, the final principle came alive, not as a concept, but as your living breath.
If you have come this far, it is crucial that you watch this next video here. But be warned, it is not for the faint of heart, for only the true chosen ones can handle this video. If you would like to also donate to help keep the channel going, our Buy Me a Coffee link will be in the description.